Hello there, and welcome to Really Cool Excel. Today we're going to learn about absolute cell referencing. Sounds terribly posh, so what's it all about? To explain, let's look back at some things we've done in earlier lessons. If you've come straight in at this point, you can pick up the earlier lessons from the website. In this worksheet we created a formula in D4 that multiplies B4 by C4. Then we used autofill to replicate the formula in D4 down through the other cells in column D, like this. As you've already learned, as you move down column D, the cell references from columns B and C change automatically. This is known as relative cell referencing. D4 is relative to B4 times C4, so D5 is relative to B5 times C5, and so it goes on. In this example, our unit cost is variable, so we have to set up our worksheet in this way. But what if the unit cost is constant, like in this example? As you can see, the formulas have been created in exactly the same way, but because the unit cost is constant, the worksheet is not as efficient as it could be. Let's imagine this is part of a quote for work we're doing for a customer, and since we started to build the quote, the unit cost has gone up to 175. To update the quote, we'll have to change all the 150s to 175. In this worksheet, that wouldn't be such a big deal, because we only have 8 entries at 150, but what if we had 100, or more than that? It still wouldn't be a huge task to make all the changes, but if we design a more efficient worksheet, we don't have to. This example shows one column for units and one for total. I've deleted the column for unit cost and replaced it with a cell containing one unit cost over here in G2. Now I'll set up the formula as in the previous example. Equals B4 multiplied by G2, and the total is 15. Then autofill down the other cells in column C. Well, that's clearly not right, so what's happened? When you get an unexpected result like this on a worksheet, like all good detectives, you have to investigate. You could stare at the screen till you're blue in the face, but the answer won't just give itself up. Detectives solve crimes by visiting the scene of the crime. In this case, that would be any of the cells with 0 in them. I'll click on C5. Now we have to look for evidence, and we'll find that on the formula bar, which says B5 times G3. The B5 part is correct, but if we follow the trail to G3, we can see it's an empty cell. And if we look further down column C, the second part of this formula is G4 and then G5. Both of these are also empty cells, and that's why the formulas aren't working. All the way through I've used autofill to replicate. By default, autofill produces relative cell references, so autofill changes both sides of the equation as we discussed a minute ago. Now it's time to introduce the subject of this lesson, absolute cell references. It's an unusual word to use here, but what it means is fixed or constant. We need to create a formula where one side of the equation changes, that's column B, but the other side remains constant, in this case cell G2. Here's how to do that. First, I'll delete the formulas that didn't work. Then I'll build the first formula again, equals B4 multiplied by G2. Now, on your keyboard there should be function keys along the top. F1, F2, probably up to F12. On a laptop you might have to press a separate FN key, FN meaning function, to make these work. To make cell G2 absolute, I will tap F4 once. The cell reference G2 now reads $G, $2. In Excel code, this means G2 is now absolute. If you type out your formulas instead of clicking cells, you can just type $G, $2. It works exactly the same. Now I'll hit enter and the result is 15. Then, as before, autofill. But this time the results are correct. And if we look at them, we'll see that references from column B change as we go down, but G2 remains absolute, fixed or constant. Now, if the unit cost changes, we only have to change one cell, G2. Change it to 175, and all our results are updated automatically. So that's absolute. You might use this when your cell holds a unit cost like this, or a percentage discount, maybe a pay rise percentage, or any other single factor you're applying to a range of formulas. There are lots of other uses for absolute. In this example, we've only used it to fix a single cell, but you can also use it to fix a block of cells, or a row, or a column, or even an entire worksheet. Rather than work through all the options here, I'll build them into future lessons as we need to use them. I'll leave you to go off and experiment, and if you'd like more practice, download the associated Excel file from the website. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.